welcome to the Public Safety Committee of the Los Angeles City Council. Today is Friday, March 27th, and I'm joined by my colleagues, council members Joe Buscaino and Mitchell Farrell. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here as well. We're going to open it up for first for general public comment. For those items for which you wish to speak, if you have a comment on any specific item, please go ahead and fill out a comment card. Keep the matter to the specific subject matter on the agenda as well. Once we start an agenda item, the cards will no longer be accepted on that specific item, and we'll go ahead and open it up to Mr. Herman on general public comment.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. And out of due respect, the Constitution says on public comment we can say what we wish at any moment, whether it's offensive or discriminatory or racist or whatever reaction I get out of you. So please listen in as I speak, Mr. Big Ears. Because the problem here today in Los Angeles is that no councilman is listening in to the Sergeant of Arms from the City of Los Angeles who need their raises now and not an increase within a certain percentage of time. I got your order on that. Now moving into another subject matter, I want to remind all you people who are dealing with safety issues, when Paul Koretz assaulted me in public comment in City Hall at the podium, tell me if that's not violent or criminal against a person like myself, a simple little homeless man from LA, Mr. Englander. See, so pay attention to us. Listen. Batman said.
That concludes the general public portion of the meeting, and so we're going to go ahead and take items first up for consent, unless my colleagues want to call any of these items special. Items 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. We have one comment card on 9. Mr. Herman, you want to come up on 9? Oh, I'm sorry. And 3. We didn't vote on any of them yet. So 1, 2, 3, and 9 are up before us. You've got cards in on 3 and 9. Mr. Herman? 3 and 9.
Mr. Speaker, thank you and good morning. I see that Mike Bonin and Nuri Martinez couldn't make it this morning on a Friday. Probably a little hangover.
Please, if you have to stick to the agenda item.
Sorry, let me stick to my topics first.
It's going to be your only warning.
Let's go forward on item number 1, which in regards to...
You don't have a card on 1, you have the cards on 3 and 9. You'll stick to the items.
For the attorney to support homeless court programs, I object because homelessness should be the main issue of all your consideration when it comes to a budget and figuring out how are you going to give people who are homeless affordable housing when you can't do that. You can't mix a burger with a hot dog. It has two different total elements of providing homelessness an answer. But now let me go on to number, you said 3, right, sir? 3. It says, full-time project-based mortgage fraud outreach. Oh, guess what? I was at that meeting the other evening at 1 o'clock, and it started a little late, half hour later. I had Mr., who was it, regarding mortgage fraud? It was, who was it? Me? A bunch of people were there. And unfortunately, Mr. Herman had to say that due to the circumstances, we can't afford to pay for all these special programs of helping homeless people and renters and all this crap. So as a result, what happened? Guess what? Some of those people are going to lose their jobs because there's no budget. Eric, our mayor, can't budget. They don't know how to use the math of 1 + 1 is 2. But to some of you, a triad means one God, but there's really 3 in 1, right? Kind of confusing. But let's stick to the last subject of my matter, item number 9. Whew. Board of Police Commissioners report relative to the recommendation of qualified vendor to provide official police garage towing and storage services for the service area. Yeah, it's a good thing. We need more storage. Why don't you just give officers a good, healthy wage, all the Sergeant of Arms?
And it's not on the subject matter.
I hold my time with respect.
Okay, your time is up, and that concludes all your comment cards on all the items. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go ahead and take those items on consent, 1, 2, 3, and 9.
Move.
With no objection, that'll be the order. Thank you, gentlemen. With that, let's go ahead and take item 4, Mr. Clerk.
Good morning, John White, City Clerk. Item 4 is motion Englander Krikorian Bonin relative to directing the Fire Department in consultation with UFLAC and the CLA to report in regard to the resources it would need to develop a nurse practitioner pilot program for Los Angeles.
Okay, if I can have staff, please come on up. Dr. Eckstein, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, before you begin and give your presentation to tell us what this is all about, I couldn't be more excited and the work that we've accomplished in putting this together and the collaboration and your expertise in helping us navigate this. This has been a dream for a long time, and I know it's a mutual one. Scary than we have mutual dreams. But this will forever change how we handle situations and respond to situations and treat people here in the city of Los Angeles. This is one thing that we can all look back on in our life and say, we've saved lives. And I know you do that routinely every day as a physician. And if you can go ahead and walk us through the nurse practitioner pilot program, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your opening remarks. Yes, this is intended to be really a game changer for the way we deliver emergency medical care in the city of Los Angeles. As everybody here is well aware, the EMS system in Los Angeles is very overtaxed in that the call load continues to rise while the number of resources has remained stagnant or actually decreased in the fire department. Number of hospitals have closed. Emergency departments are operating above capacity. Our paramedics have difficulty getting out of the hospital when they deliver and transfer care. The so-called wall time has gone up, and all those factors then result in prolonged response times, which then may compromise lives. And if you drill down and look at what our EMS system basically comprises now, it's really lost on nobody that there's a significant percentage of patients on whom we respond and transport who have very low acuity medical complaints and really are not best served being transported in a fire department ambulance to an emergency department, but they need urgent care type interventions in the field, and they need follow-up. They need placement in a medical home for long-term primary care and preventative care. So there's two goals of this program. One is to develop a paradigm shift where we have highly trained clinicians. This is a nurse practitioner who has extensive formal schooling and clinical training in provision of urgent care, which is low acuity care and chronic care for patients, then free up our paramedics and firefighters to handle life-threatening emergencies, decrease the number of ambulance transports, which of course then decreases response times, increases availability. And the other goal of the program is to deal with a significant subset of patients on whom we call the EMS super users. So Los Angeles, like every large city in America, and even smaller cities in America, have a group of patients who repeatedly call 911 really in excess. There's varying definitions of what defines a super user. We went ahead and did extensive data and research looking at our top 40, and just our top 40 super users last year alone resulted in 2,400 EMS incidents, which was the response of 2,800 emergency vehicles and 2,200 transports. Estimated cost about $2.5 million, for which we reimbursed less than $250,000. So the goal is not just to try to deal with the super users and get them out of our system. The deal is to provide them with the help that they need. These are vulnerable adults. Many of them have chronic medical problems. There also is a high incidence of substance abuse, mental health issues. So the nurse practitioner, again, has two goals. One is to provide scheduled visits with our so-called super users, to get them plugged in with multiple stakeholders in the city and county to address their long-term needs, get them the help that they need, which then frees up our resources. They don't have to call 911. Number two is when our paramedics and firefighters respond to an incident and within the parameters we set forth, the patient's deemed to be very low acuity, who doesn't need transport by ambulance to an emergency department, the nurse practitioner response unit will respond and basically provide a rapid, comprehensive medical evaluation with point-of-care testing to do a treat and release and a treat and refer. So the net result of the program is designed to increase availability of our emergency personnel and resources, decrease the number of hospital transports, and decrease the number of times 911 is utilized by our so-called super users.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you. And colleagues, and so what we've looked at in putting this together is, first and foremost, under FireStat LA, we analyzed, and the key part of FireStat was to look at all the statistical analysis and make sure that it was verifiable and accurate data. With the mission and the goal and the objective of being, you can't fix what you can't measure. Where are all the problems? Where can we create efficiencies, and what are best practices, and creating then a dialogue and a communication from the boots on the ground to the best practices nationally. And communicating that with all the key stakeholders, the decision makers, as well as the experts in the field like Dr. Eckstein. And looking at that model and saying, what can we do now that we know we've got verifiable and accurate data? Where are some of the problems, and then what are some of the solutions to drive those down? One of the things we've recently implemented was the 4-bureau system. That is now off the ground and running well. And so with that, this is yet just another step, but a great step, and it's a pilot program. And working very closely with Dr. Eckstein, what we've developed here is the idea that we will have a nurse practitioner. It's a 12-month program, and we're going to have one. And the idea is that then they can work with patients. They can work with these folks who are the high-frequency users, those chronic callers, the ones that don't call 5 times or 10 times or 25 times in a calendar year, but oftentimes 200 or 300 times, if you can imagine that, 911 in a calendar year. This is our resources going out each and every time, sometimes twice a day, to the same person, to the same address, for whatever reason, and then transporting that individual to a hospital, waiting with them until they can check them into a hospital, and taking that valuable resource out of the pool to respond to real emergencies. The whole idea is not to ignore these folks, but to actually help them, get them the help that they truly need. With a nurse practitioner, they can do so many other things. They can prescribe medications. They can work with them. They can even perhaps, if there's a laceration and they need a suture, they can do that on site. They'll be equipped with technology as well as medical resources that other paramedics and ambulance service don't necessarily have and aren't equipped or trained to provide. So we are not the first, but we'll be the first large city in the country doing this out of the top 5 cities. I won't say the top 10, because Dallas just started, and they're in the top 8, just started this program, and we actually went out to Dallas and looked at the program, and it was absolutely phenomenal in what they're doing, and they're excited. That has really helped not only those chronic patients that need more of a triage, that need medical services, that perhaps they're not taking their medication, they need to work with a nutritionist, they need to get into a regular physician on a regular basis. It's working with those folks that need help. But it's also working with our firefighters and paramedics. About 85 to 90% of all of our calls out today, 350,000 calls to the fire department each and every year, and that number continues to go up, are medical related. So we've got a growing problem and a growing need, and this is a solution. Mesa, Arizona has been doing this for 10 years, very, very successfully.
How many do they have?
Mesa has, I don't know the number Mesa has, but they've expanded it. Now they're partnering with the hospitals and insurance companies and doing it, and they've really created the model of this program. They have, what was said to me from Mesa is they grow and expand the program on a needed basis. So I think the number fluctuates based on need. But they've worked with all of their physicians, their clinics, and their hospitals to provide this type of service. In fact, CVS Pharmacy just launched a nurse practitioner program just last week, where there's going to be a nurse practitioner. So imagine that. You can walk into a pharmacy. You don't have to make an appointment to go see a physician to get either a prescription, perhaps some blood work, or other tests done that would otherwise take a lot of time and challenge. And you can walk into a pharmacy and simply see a nurse practitioner for those type of diagnoses. We'll be doing that now in the fire department. So I'd urge for your aye vote, and I'd also ask that we get a report back every quarter to this committee on how the program is going, because not only am I confident that it's going to go well, but it will expand after the first year, and it would be hopeful that in year 2 of this program we would have at least one in every one of the 4 bureaus, and then expand even further from there as needed. And so I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues for any questions, comments, or concern.
Thanks, Mitch. I mean, I'm just proud of your efforts here, man. You're taking this above and beyond. When we talk about going above and beyond the call of duty, we have an issue. We're tackling a problem. Thanks to Firestat, we know the problem and we're tackling it. And I just want to recognize your efforts and leadership in the fire departments. I love the fact that you're also bringing in UFLAC into the problem-solving process as well. So it's my understanding we're going to just mobilize one nurse practitioner the next 12 months.
Yes, sir. This is based upon funding. So This is a pilot program demonstrating safety and efficacy. We have metrics that we're going to be producing quarterly reports, because I'm very confident as the council member that the data will be so compelling. I think the city leaders will want to increase funding. We're also reaching out to non-governmental organizations for funding. But I think the data will be very, very compelling.
This individual will be focused on what part of the city?
We haven't determined exactly what neighborhood to focus it on. There are many, many neighborhoods where the need is quite compelling.
But you have the data to back that
yes,
up,
sir.
Right, as far as where to go.
So the plan right now is bring on board one nurse practitioner. They'll be partnered with a paramedic in a reserve ambulance with a new cache of medical equipment specific for this project.
So explain to me the process of mobilizing this nurse practitioner as far as the call comes in. Can you just walk me through that?
Yes, sir.
Process?
So a couple of ways the nurse practitioner unit can be mobilized. They'll be in a certain neighborhood, certain days of the week, certain hours, and based upon the dispatch for a low acuity patient, they can respond non-emergency with the ambulance's order dispatch. So they're not going to change, they're not going to eliminate the initial dispatch, but they may add themselves to a dispatch. Or more likely, when our firefighters or paramedics are already on scene and they see a patient whom they don't think needs transport to the hospital based upon specific criteria we'll train them on, they'll request a nurse practitioner response unit. The response unit will respond. Once they get on scene, our paramedics or ambulances are free, they go available for the next call. So the NPRU does the evaluation, and it's the treat and release modality. The other part of their time when they're not responding to the low acuity patients for a treat and release mode, they'll be providing scheduled visits with the so-called super users to try to get them plugged in, get them definitive care, get them the help to get them out of the emergency care system.
I would just urge, I know this is a pilot program, but it's obviously a necessity. The complaints that I get in my numerous ride-alongs with the fire department is the wall time at the hospitals, and I know we're starting here with one, but man, if we can mobilize and get several others, it'll definitely help with the problem of the wall time at our hospitals. So thank you for your effort and support this moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Dr. Eckstein was here just a couple of days ago in the Joint Committee, so I won't belabor this at all. I think it's a great program, so I also applaud your leadership on this. And my suggestion, again, is to take the data where the highest percentage of high-frequency calls are coming from and just start there, because I think you'll get the best possible sampling. That's what I would suggest, and I look forward to the reports. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you very much. And I just wanted to add one thing as well. Imagine this. We understand what this program can do and will do, but thinking outside the box in what this doesn't address every single day and what it could address. In a major disaster, for example, my district experiences those, and as what's been labeled by some as the epicenter of disaster, with the Chatsworth train accident that we've had, the Northridge earthquake, the annual fires that we have in CD12 as well. And I was at the Chatsworth train collision all night, helping victims, pulling off bodies, working with all the volunteers and the first responders. Dr. Eckstein was there alongside me as well, working with patients. And imagine if we had a nurse practitioner program and we had a few of them citywide that could then respond to a major disaster where we set up a triage, where we have all of these folks there And because somebody's simply injured doesn't necessarily mean that they take a precedent and have to be transported. That we could have a nurse practitioner there on site working hand in hand with the firefighters and our first responders and our paramedics, working with those patients immediately on the ground in a major disaster as well. So you've got the day-to-day component, you've got the wall-time solutions, you've got the ability to help people, and these often people are people that have either chronic problems, mental illness, significant issues that need much more than just a transport to a hospital. But also imagine that we can have this opportunity in a major disaster here as well, and how much more they bring to the table. Because as we were transporting in that incident, in that crisis, imagine the wall time when we had 17 patients going to one hospital, 19 to another hospital, rushing into an emergency room that was already at 98% capacity that night. Imagine what happens then. And so this is phenomenal, and I truly appreciate not just your work on this, but each and every day to the City of Los Angeles, to the residents of Los Angeles, to what you do with County USC, with West Hills Hospital, for the City of Los Angeles. You commit so much time and energy and effort. And I know you also have a family. And so the hours, the expertise that you put into not just partnering on programs like this, but so many other things. We're all so grateful for your partnership with the city. And I want to give you a round of applause, Dr. Eckstein. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those kind words and your support and leadership. And this is really a game changer for the city. I'm very excited, appreciate your support. And once we launch, we'll come back with very, very compelling data. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
And with that, we'll call for the vote.
Move approval.
All ayes. All right. Unanimous approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that will be with a quarterly report back to this committee as well. Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and take item 5. I don't know if anybody here is from Bob Blumenfield's office that wish to speak on that. Okay, so if not, we'll go ahead and move that item.
Move it.
We can go ahead and move the item. So item 5, we'll go ahead and move item 5. Without objection, that'll be the order. Item 6, I'd like to turn that over to Councilmember Mike Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe there's various staff from LAPD and City Attorney as well. Great. Let me sort of frame this a bit. Colleagues, every week I'm in office, I think I wind up paying more attention and putting more effort and having my conscience drawn stronger to the issue of homelessness in the city of Los Angeles. It's a growing problem. I think the homeless count that we're going to get the results from shortly is going to show that homelessness in the city of Los Angeles has actually increased. It's an enormous issue for me in my district, in the 11th district on the west side, particularly but not exclusively in Venice, also in Westchester, in Dover, huge encampments in Pacific Palisades. And there is undeniably a huge intersection of homelessness and mental illness. And it's for that reason that I submitted this motion, which asks about 3 different elements of the way the city, and particularly law enforcement, is dealing with that intersection of homelessness and mental illness. I think we can all agree that our law enforcement agencies should not be the primary way that we respond to homelessness or to mental illness. But the fact of the matter is that law enforcement is often the first time we encounter or experience someone who is mentally ill or is homeless and is mentally ill, and it's our first point of intersection and our first opportunity to connect that individual to better resources and potentially greater solutions for their way of life. So there were, in the wake of the incident on Skid Row a couple weeks ago in particular, I started getting a lot of inquiries about what LAPD does and about its mental evaluation unit. And many of you may be familiar with the political climate in Venice is often polarized, and there were a number of people who immediately were critical of LAPD and started sending me news articles saying, why can't LAPD do this? Why can't LAPD do that? And they were examples from other cities. And so I began to do a little research into it, and in more than a couple of the examples folks sent me, the programs that were at work were actually modeled after what LAPD has done or has been doing. And so I wanted to get a little bit more information on exactly what our mental evaluation unit, our SMART program, our SMART teams do, and how extensive it is. So there's a couple different items I asked about. Who here is, could you identify who's here actually at the table?
Good morning. I'm Captain Hearn from Gang and Narcotics Division, appearing for Kelly Moldorfer, who's the commanding officer for Detective Support and Vice Division. To my left is Lionel Garcia. He is the OIC of the Mental Evaluation Unit, and will be able to speak to those issues pertaining to mental illness. I'd also like to mention, before we go into my partner to the right, is that Lionel's going to be retiring at the end of April, 32 years of service with the City of Los Angeles, so it's going to be some big shoes to fill.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm Lieutenant Brian Bixler, and I'll be taking over once Lieutenant Garcia retires. So I'm here to learn from a man who has well-versed in this and has made this program what it is. So
Fantastic. And
I'm Richard Schmidt. I'm the supervising attorney for the Valley Criminal Branch Operations of the City Attorney's Office.
fantastic. So first, could you give me just a quick overview of the unit, how long it's been around, and what it has done to gain its national reputation?
Yes, sir. Once again, I'm Lieutenant Lionel Garcia, 32 years with the department. I've been the officer in charge of what's known as the Crisis Response Support Section. Within that section is the Mental Evaluation Unit and the Threat Management Unit. I've been the officer in charge for the past 7 years. The MEU, as it's known, was established decades ago. At least 4 or 5 decades that we can research. When I came on the job in '83, there was a mental evaluation unit that consisted of primarily a triage desk. And it was a small operation where officers would take the person who was suffering from mental health crisis to that office for evaluation, and then they would be routed to the hospital where they were taken for treatment. That grew in 1993 to incorporate partnership with the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, and we incorporated what we call now SMART teams, the system-wide mental assessment response teams, co-deployed operation. Since that time, the operation has expanded, particularly during the time of the federal consent decree. When the monitor came in, they evaluated, of course, everything within the organization. How we managed mental illness was one of those strategies that they monitored. They wrote a significant report which identified best practices nationwide and made several recommendations as to how the operation should look, how it should function. It was determined that the practice that LAPD was engaged in was the best practice, but it needed some little tweaking here and there. So over the years, the operation has grown significantly from an operation in 1993 that was approximately 8 people to now 105 persons in the operation. Approximately 65 officers and 32 clinicians comprise the operation, and the remainder are comprised of my threat management unit. But the operation is multi-layered, and it consists of a triage desk, which intakes calls, because by procedure, every time a police officer responds to a call and it's determined that somebody is suffering from a mental health crisis, by procedure, they must call the triage desk. And they receive guidance from the officers and the clinicians assigned at the triage desk, how to manage the call, and then we route to particular hospitals or service centers. We fully document that contact in an extensive report, and we maintain that information in a confidential database in-house within the MEU. We use that information for future incidents, such as if the person is barricaded themselves and it's a tactical scenario, we will have a history of that person in our database, so we'll know how to engage with that individual. But it's a very extensive database. The triage desk is responsible for dispatching the SMART teams to a particular call, because once the officer determines, upon responding to a call, that the case does involve a mental health crisis, and they call the triage desk, it's at that point that we dispatch a unit to aid them and to take over the call. Now, we cannot...
Where are they dispatched from?
The SMART teams are deployed in each bureau. So they roll call at centralized location downtown, and then they drive to their particular bureau. So we have one car per bureau per shift.
Long ETAs.
Long ETAs, yeah. So we cannot handle every crisis call that's dispatched. Last year, we received over 14,000 crisis calls. We manage about 40% of those calls via the SMART teams. We manage 100% of those calls via the telephone, right? The patrol officers have to handle the rest of the calls. So as the SMART teams are dispatched, the triage desk has evaluated the urgency of that call, the type of call, because if we have simultaneous calls dispatched, and one is an attempt suicide and the other is an officer found somebody maybe wandering in the street, we have to measure which one is more important to handle and what can we possibly handle. So once that determination is made, the SMART unit is dispatched to a particular call, and the patrol is guided in how to handle the other call. Once the SMART team responds, the patrol unit is excused, and the team handles the call to its fruition, meaning placement in a hospital. The next level is if the individual meets certain criteria. Maybe they've contacted the police several times or have a history of attempt suicide, or there's weapons involved, or other type of critical case. That case will be sent over to my investigative follow-up team called CAMP, the Case Assessment Management Program. CAMP links those folks to services, make sure that they're linked to services while they're in the hospitals and or upon release. The CAMP engages with these individuals until they're linked and stable. The cases never close. And we get about 25 new cases assigned to CAMP each week. So as long as somebody resides in the city of Los Angeles, it's an open case, but it may be dormant, depending on the status of the individual. But the CAMP will not place the case dormant as long as this person has issues and are causing issues for themselves or family members or police officers, what have you. So the CAMP unit does a great job in intervening in those types of cases. The difficulty for the team is if the person is indigent and we're not able to contact the person at the hospital, once they're released from the hospital, it's hard to locate them again. We attempt to go to the location where we last found them to try to track them down. Otherwise, we have great success in managing those folks who come from homes, stable environments. The majority of our calls, 81%, are coming from homes. 19% are coming from the indigent population. So our call load is being driven by persons from established residences and or businesses or schools. And like I stated, we received 14,000 calls a year last year.
So last week, for instance, there was an LAPD call for assistance to the mental evaluation unit for a woman who was clearly in mental distress. She was sitting for days in a pile of her own feces in front of a business, wasn't able to feed herself unless someone, a neighbor or something, brought her food. It took a long time for a response. Has there been any consideration given, and maybe it was funding that held it back, to having more SMART teams or having them deployed at the area station level as opposed to the bureau level?
Yes. There was a point back 8 years ago where the Los Angeles Police Department's MEU was essentially almost the only game in town, essentially, except for Long Beach, who started up an operation. Since that time, and since the MEU has become a global leader, it's a national model, and everybody's emulating what we're attempting to do here, there's movement within the county for all the other agencies to want to do the same thing, which is great. But it inhibits our ability to now be staffed with additional clinicians from the county. So per our agreement, they've agreed to staff us to the level that they've agreed to staff us with, our historical staffing levels. The county sheriff has just summoned 28 clinicians for their operation. Right now they have about 4 clinicians. County is having difficulty finding those clinicians to staff the county sheriff, not to mention the South Bay teams and the San Gabriel Valley teams and the other teams.
So it's not your resources so much as the county partners.
Correct. Our resources, as much as possible, when we have extra officers working a particular day, I will team them up and send them out as a pseudo-smart team.
So Mr. Buscaino and I are both sort of on separate tracks doing something very similar about homelessness in our districts. We're putting together collaborative teams of various agencies and stakeholders. One of my very strong partners is our county supervisor, Sheila Kuehl, in the Department of Mental Health.
Yes.
If they were able to, through their channels, allocate a clinician or clinicians as resources, would we be able to match that and provide a smart team to sort of crisis hotspots?
That would be a department decision, but there is movement within our department for sure to expand the operation as much as possible, particularly to cover the morning watch shift, as we call it, because we close from the hours of 1:30 to 6 in the morning, and our command post picks up the call load and guides the officers in the field on how to place and where to place. But we certainly need to move forward with a 24-hour operation.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be done in 2009, but didn't get achieved. But if our operation could be staffed with additional clinician, certainly, no doubt the department would match that deployment so that we could expand the operation. The calls at times can take long, so what I've done is, to try to aid in this process, is to set up a satellite offices in 4 stations, 77th, Central, Van Nuys, and Hollywood.
You didn't say Pacific.
Yeah, well, I know. We were trying to pick centralized locations, but Pacific would be a place where we'd like to do that as well. And what that enables my teams to do is to respond to those stations, particularly Central, and the officers can bring multiple people to that station to be evaluated. It's not the best setting to take someone to a station to be evaluated, but it enables us to handle more calls than if we were to route them just to one call. The long-term future plan would be to have them dispatch from the stations to eliminate the travel time.
Right.
Of course, we need more vehicles and such, but that would be a future plan to deploy from the stations centralized management of the operation, so everything stays in order. But again, that's a equipment issue and what have you, and staffing issue. But we've made certain adjustments in how we place at hospitals, talking about wall time.
Yeah.
The problem for PD, for the police department, and this is county-wide, is this wait time at the hospitals. We have system issues within this county. The police, we have it down at the front end, and then we turn around and place, and there's nowhere to go. right? We don't have a one-stop shop location where we can take them to a service center to be treated, and there's all of these service providers in this facility. We just don't have that. We have the county hospital, and we have now 2 urgent care centers. So procedurally, we used to call the Department of Hospital Services once we determined, yes, this person's in crisis, needs hospitalization, and we would call them and they would dispatch us to a hospital. And they would give us a number they called a MAC number, a Medical Alert Center number. And this MAC number used to mean that there was an open bed waiting for us at the hospital, which was a quick transport and a handoff. Well, in these latter years, it really meant nothing any longer. And it was our only option to transport to the hospitals. That's it. So we're experiencing, actually a couple weeks ago, cases where we've had 10, 12, 13-hour waits at the hospitals. So the SMART teams are waiting there 10, 12 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. Patrols waiting is just as long, and it's hard to get back in service. So I eliminated the process of calling DHS because I have a triage desk and we can dispatch ourselves. We are aware of the hospitals. We know where to place. So now, since I've done that, we can now make use of the service centers. So those individuals who meet criteria for intake at the service centers, we can now transport to the service centers, and that's a 10-minute handoff, and it's coordinated. So a majority of our subjects are being transported first to the service centers rather than the county hospitals. And the folks that have to go to the hospitals, well, we're taking them there as well. Those who have private insurance, we're taking them to the private hospitals because they have private insurance, like Kaiser and what have you. Just that move, absent additional personnel and resources, we increased our ability to respond to calls by about 10%. Just that move. And so we're always looking at strategic ways to manage our call load and to manage our effectiveness because we know resources are scarce. Right. And so as an operation, we're always looking to improve any way we can.
Thank you. And who here is point person on Laura's Law? Oh, okay. Well, that's convenient. So could you just briefly explain Laura's Law and how the department is working with the county now to be able to use that tool?
Yes, sir. First of all, the city of Los Angeles is very fortunate in that its police department is at the forefront of all these issues. We're the only agency at the table with LA County on a majority of their issues, including Laura's Law. We're the only law enforcement AG in this committee, and myself and others and my team on this committee. So the Laura's Law plan, which might take effect within the county approximately June. Their next meeting is June 11th to discuss their draft proposal, and which I have in my hand here. They're establishing their adult... excuse me.
I thought they were going to start implementing it as soon as next month.
Well, they're looking at possibly May or June. Their next scheduled meeting is for June 11th, and is to discuss their draft proposal for the implementation of the AOT, of the Assisted Outpatient Treatment Plan, and the teams that they're designing. So they're in the process of hiring clinicians to staff their assisted outpatient teams, their unit. They're looking around May, June, possibly, to implement the strategy. So with that, the department has already we've already assessed our role in their strategy based on what they've designed. So it appears, and it's going to be our strategy, that we are going to be a conduit as qualified reporters. The MEU will be the conduit for our officers to report persons to this AOT team in LA County. So we're going to establish a procedure whereby the police officers who are making these referrals route those referrals to the MEU so we can track them, make sure that everything's in order, and then we're not going to review them for criteria or what have you. We're going to pass them on forward to the county team. It's the county team that will manage the case. And if the person does not qualify for the AOT, then it will be the county team to determine the proper treatment and linkage
So in
services.
short, you'll be a referring agency?
Correct.
But that referring agency has to be through your unit. What schooling is the rank and file officer on Venice Beach or in Van Nuys going to have to know that that new tool is available in the toolbox?
Well, we're writing procedures, and we're going to publish those procedures, and they'll be disseminated to all of the officers. Of course, we'll present those procedures at roll call training and other training environments within the department. But we're working on establishing our internal department procedures that will fully explain the qualifications for referral, who's eligible to make referrals, and the process, LAPD process for managing those referrals. So that'll be fully documented in our internal procedures that will be disseminated to all of the officers in the field.
Sounds like it would be much more effective if, referring back to the previous line of questioning, if we actually had more of a presence or smart teams in each station as opposed to just at the bureau level. Because it'd be a quicker response. And
well, the smart teams are not going to be the referring, the entity to gather those referrals. Those referrals are going to be directed to my camp investigators. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the referrals will go directly to camp, and then the camp will work with the county AOT.
Great.
To manage these referrals.
Thank you. And then the final element of the motion was asking about how the third district diversion and alternative sentence pilot program is going, and how the city attorney's office is working with it.
Yes, the program started in late September, and to date there have been 15 referrals to the program. Briefly, what happens is the program is designed to provide permanent supportive housing to individuals who qualify, who come to us either via felony or misdemeanor arrest. Initially, there were 14 of the 15 referrals occurred between the late September and December 31st date. There's only been one referral since that time. That was in February. We had a meeting about 2 weeks ago to try to identify what seems to be a drop-off, or what is a drop-off. Part of it seems to be it's speculated that part of it is the effect of Prop 47, that defendants who used to be facing felony treatment are now looking at misdemeanor cases where a time-served sentence is often given by the court. And so, of course, the public defenders and the alternate public defenders have sort of an increased difficulty in selling someone who is already mentally ill on the prospect of a longer-term program as opposed to sort of a quick out referral.
Of the referrals you mentioned, you said there were 14, 15 referrals. Those are 14, 15 referrals to the program overall, or 14 to 15 referrals that were being handled by the city attorney's office?
Those are 15 overall. Half of those are being handled by the city attorney's office.
Half, okay.
7, actually 8 misdemeanors and 7 felonies. Of the 15, 4 individuals were remanded back to the court when they failed to cooperate and participate in the program. We have 2 individuals whose entry into the program allowed them to be guided to an alternative program, an alternative facility. So we have 2 that were redirected to what was considered a more appropriate program. 2 have successfully graduated, both of those behind misdemeanor offenses. They successfully graduated and are in transitional housing awaiting their permanent assignment. We have 1 currently in process now. We have 2 people who absconded, basically both on felonies, who basically walked away from the program, and their warrants out. And then there were a handful of people who, there's an initial assessment by Department of Mental Health at the courthouse, and then there is a more thorough assessment by the San Fernando Valley Community Mental Health workers. And we had a handful of those who, once the second assessment was done, were deemed to be either too dangerous or too mentally ill to participate in the program.
So mixed success at best so far?
Pardon?
Mixed success at best so far?
It's mixed. The program itself, it's really an unprecedented sort of cooperation between the various entities, the Superior Court, the Public Defender's Office, our office, the DA's office, and it's funded, which is, quite a remarkable thing these days. What we're seeing now is we anticipated that we would fill these 50 slots very quickly. A number of things have happened that have changed that. One is we have to wait for a homeless person to be arrested before it comes to us. The second is the possible impact of Prop 47 in giving us a much smaller stick to go along with the carrot that we can offer these people. We also have discovered, however, that initially there were some communication issues between the Sheriff's Department and the Public Defender's Office and the courts and the Sheriff's Department. They're supposed to have a sort of a immediate conditional release to the mental health workers. We had a couple of instances where there were some glitches. People were held on other warrants that we had not been known about, and therefore the conditional release to the mental health workers didn't occur. That problem has been addressed, and we're basically sort of smoothing out the process now. I anticipate that we will have more entries, successful entries into the program once we get this little roadblock taken care of.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for indulging me with so much time on this.
I don't think we've spent enough time, quite frankly. I think this is probably one of the most important issues, quite frankly, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Nuri Martinez.
No, I had a recommendation on something, but...
Yeah, no, absolutely. And please, yes, morning.
So I have a couple of questions going back to Laura's law. So in regards to the law, it's mentioned in the state of California that it's supposed to provide community-based assisted outpatient treatment to a small population of individuals who meet strict legal criteria. So my question is, what's the definition of small population? I mean, how many people are we talking about in terms of what's the amount of people that you expect Laura's law to actually help?
Well, I'm not sure of the population, but their criteria does limit the population because the criteria identified, they have to be 18 years of age. The person is suffering from mental illness. There is a clinical determination that the person is unlikely to survive safely in the community without supervision. So a clinical determination, not a police officer, right? A clinical determination. The person has a history of lack of compliance in that at least one of the following is true. The person's mental illness has at least twice within the last 36 months been a substantial factor in necessitating hospitalization or receipt of services in a forensic or other mental health unit or state correctional facility or local correctional facility. The person's mental illness has resulted in one or more acts of serious or violent behavior. So if they have a history of just sitting on a bus bench and they have not been evaluated or placed on a hold and they don't exhibit any of these things, they may not qualify. The person
is restricted by funding or by an actual amount of people that the laws actually is able to serve? That's my question.
Well, there's 300 beds countywide and 60 inpatient, I guess, long-term beds countywide. So they're limited by the number of beds that they have for the entire county. And the county board of supervisors increased the number of beds from about 24 or so to 300. So they'll be limited by the number of beds that they have to service the population. And those don't meet this criteria will be serviced in other ways. So it's tough to identify the population because we don't know who meets this criteria out there. And the county doesn't either. So all we know is they have 300 beds to service for the entire county of Los Angeles.
Just by the volume of homeless folks in my district, just in Sun Valley and parts of the Northeast San Fernando Valley alone, you can identify well over 300 people. So we're just limited on the amount of beds that we actually
Sure,
have.
and I don't believe this was implemented to address homeless, right? It was critical persons who are suffering mental health crisis, right?
That was my question. I had another question about the alternative sentencing program.
Yeah.
And so what's the criteria for the 50 eligible participants in order to qualify for the pilot program? What's the basic criteria?
They have to be seriously mentally ill. They have to be chronically homeless, and that can be homeless for a period of a year or more, or 4 separate incidences of homelessness within a year. The district attorney has excluded a variety of, or has given a limited list of felonies that they will consider referring. The city attorney's office has taken the approach where we have given a list of, a smaller list of cases that we exclude. We don't send domestic violence cases there, obviously. Sex crimes cases, anything involving a firearm. But other than that, most of the misdemeanors that come through are eligible for referral. What we found, and one of the things that we are trying to refine now, what we found is that the public defender, will interview a client, and the client appears to be seriously mentally ill. And then during the course of the assessment, it may be determined that the mental illness is so serious that the likelihood of them being able to participate in the program successfully is very limited. So the person will be excluded from that. But that's the basic criteria. It's the basic criteria.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. With that, colleagues, first and foremost, Councilman Bonin, I want to thank you very, very much, and Councilwoman Martinez for that informative discussion as well, and all the experts and city family and others as well that have been. This is by far one of the biggest crises that we're dealing with as a region, as a city, as a county, and as a nation. It's an epidemic that is being treated with a Band-Aid solution in terms of funding and resources. It's one that we really do have to do a deep dive in and trying to figure out and prioritize and come up with innovative solutions and bringing other folks on board with as well. It's one that affects every walk of life. Mental illness, drug addiction, a lot of them are veterans as well. These are families. These are people's children and brothers and sisters, uncles and aunts, cousins, nephews. These are folks, our neighbors, who end up either on the street or incarcerated. The County of Los Angeles runs the largest mental institution in the country, and it's a jail. There's no real help that's available in terms of what we really need in terms of resources. So I can't thank you enough. In fact, what I would like to do is not hold this in committee. In talking to my colleagues, what I'd like to do is bring this to the full City Council. I'd like to do it, Mr. Clerk, prior to the beginning of the budget deliberations, because I think this needs to be on the forefront of everybody's mind as we start looking at our priorities in the City of Los Angeles. And so if we can work with the Council President's office and try to get this scheduled on a day prior to the beginning of the budget process, that would be great if that's possible. If it's not possible, we'll try to do it as soon as possible. With that, we'll bring in additional folks from county resources as well and have a deliberative discussion and dialogue and look at solutions and what we can do to help. It's going to be an all-hands-on-deck approach, and it shall be. After it goes to council, we would like to come back to this committee in 90 days. And from there, we will schedule and try to have a one-item-only committee agenda with this item as well. And I appreciate, again, all of your efforts and all of your efforts as well. Thank you very much. That'll be the order, without objection. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to you as well.
Thanks.
We're going to see you back. When are you retiring?
With that, we're going to go ahead and recess the regular agenda for a moment and go into the special. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. Special agenda, items 1 through 6.
Okay, and do we have any cards on those?
No, sir.
Okay, so no cards. We'll go ahead and take those items on consent. And seeing no objection, we'll go ahead and move those items
Very good.
on consent. That'll be the order without objection. Okay, that concludes the special agenda. We'll adjourn the special meeting and go back into the regular meeting. And now we'll go ahead and take item number 8.
Item number 8, City Attorney Report and Ordinance relative to adding Article 2.3 to Chapter 12 of Division 19 of the Los Angeles Administrative Code to establish a hit-and-run reward program.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to first open it up to my partner in crime, Councilmember Joe Buscaino.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for partnering with me on this issue of, the city having the distinctive role of title of leading the country and the highest number of hit-and-run crimes, and something that we need to, as a city, take action and try to address this epidemic. And this item before us really focuses on ending the culture of driver apathy in the city of Los Angeles, where we continue to hear the stories of motorists fleeing the scenes of hit-and-run crimes. So this standing reward will help deter people from immediately driving or leaving an accident, and also with great hopes of engaging the public and increase the number of witnesses to come forward. We have the best and brightest traffic investigators who oftentimes are handcuffed by not having the ability to investigate and prosecute these crimes. So it is with great hope that we incentivize witnesses to come forward to seek the justice needed, specifically to those folks who, families who have lost loved ones that have left to die in the streets in the city of Los Angeles. And these rewards obviously start at the property damage only at $1,000 and increase to $50,000 in these type of crimes that involve fatal hit-and-run crimes. I believe we just had one out in the Valley, and a $50,000 reward is being offered. So we hear this numerous times every week in our city, and our intention is not to increase the number of these crimes that we solve, but to begin to engage change the mindset of drivers. It's also important to develop a comprehensive outreach plan once this is approved and moved forward, and I'd like to hear from the department some of the work that they plan on doing on public engagement. We have standing rewards on vandalism and graffiti, as well as illegal dumping. So want to know more about what the department plans on doing to engage and launch a PR campaign moving forward. And this is, of course, a companion bill with the Medina alert system that Mr. Englander has launched here to really tackle this issue and ultimately help solve this hit-and-run epidemic in the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to also open it up and thank Councilmember Joe Buscaino on this. This is an epidemic. We've had 20,000 hit-and-runs here in the city of Los Angeles last year alone. That's roughly 48% of all traffic collisions in the city. We are the nation's capital of hit-and-runs. People are dying on the streets here in Los Angeles. And in fact, we have recently, last year, relabeled these accidents as crimes. This is a crime. When you leave somebody on the side of the road to die like a wounded animal, it's a cowardly crime. And we've got a message to you. We're going to come after you. We're going to prosecute you. And what we've done is we've come up with a collective package. And this is a complement package to that. First and foremost is partnering with the state legislature. So we're going to have a Medina alert system, similar to Amber Alert, where we can push messages out on electronic boards. We're going to have proactive text messaging and social media. We're going to utilize with LAPD and traffic. We're going to push that information to regional locations so we can get the information to the public, utilizing Nixle, text messaging, Facebook, Twitter accounts, and get that message out there. That not only there may have been a hit and run crime committed in your neighborhood, but you're going to get a reward for it now as well. On top of that, if you're caught, there's a new motion that is in here as well. And your car, you committed a hit and run crime that resulted in serious bodily injury or death, we will seize your car and crush it or sell it, as we do with other types of serious crimes. You've now used your vehicle as a weapon. We're coming after you. On top of that, we now have not only this reward motion coming, but we're going to reach out to the body shops here in Los Angeles as well. We know that if they receive a car for repair, they too will be eligible for a reward. But they know oftentimes, they can sense it. If there's blood in the grill, if there's hair on the windshield, it may not have been an animal. Yes, that visual isn't pretty, but it's real and it's happening here today in Los Angeles. So the whole idea of this package is to be a force multiplier, is to get the community and the stakeholders throughout Los Angeles involved, that if they see something, to say something. Stop and render aid. Help that person on the side of the road first and foremost. Call 911. Try to get information of the vehicle, the description, the direction of travel. Do not chase that person. Do not get involved. Help the victim, get the information, become part of the solution. So with that, again, I wanted to thank you for the partnership in this, and I turn it over to my colleagues before we open it up for any questions.
I just wanted to echo the thanks for the leadership on this and underscore how important the process is that you just outlined, this package, and how helpful it's going to be. Prior to all of this stuff being available, there was a brutal hit and run around the holidays a year and a half ago in Pacific Palisades, where a young budding filmmaker, David Pragerson, son and grandson of Judges Pragerson, was killed and left like a wounded animal by the side of the road. And the community made an unprecedented effort to identify and find the killer, matched with a reward from the city, a reward from the Pragerson family, and truly unprecedented efforts by the Palisadian Post newspaper, which went out and got surveillance footage from some of the homes in the area, which would not let this issue go. They sort of did an old-fashioned version of what we're hoping to do on a regular basis with Nixle and texting and all of this. And I'm happy to report that the killer, I use that term deliberately, was apprehended, was tried, and has been convicted. And we need more of that.
Yes, excellent. Thank you very much. One of the next phases of this as well is actually going to be utilizing the dispatch systems. Any organization or company that has a dispatch system, including the City of Los Angeles, whether it's our sanitation workers, our public works, folks that are out there on the streets every day in our communities, working with FedEx and UPS, taxi companies and Ubers, all of those folks with the dispatch system is sharing the information with them so they can put it out to their drivers, because we know they're driving throughout the streets of Los Angeles and they perhaps saw something. The other thing we're going to be doing in the near future is utilizing all of our camera systems here in the City of Los Angeles, is we're working towards an objective with DOT and LAPD where we can bring in our ADSAC camera systems, our automated traffic signalization systems throughout the City of Los Angeles, 650 cameras, intersection cameras, into a split feed in the LAPD with recording capabilities so we can track those intersections as well, so we can go after these drivers. We're going to throw everything we can at this. So with that, if we can open it up to our panel of experts as well. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, fellow committee members, Deputy City Attorney Brian Citelli. The draft ordinance before you will add Article 2.3 to Chapter 12, Division 19 of the LA Administrative Code to establish a hit-and-run reward program, which is modeled after the graffiti, vandalism, and illegal dumping existing reward program. The draft ordinance creates the hit-and-run reward program and provides for standing rewards for persons who provide information to law enforcement agencies that lead to the identification, apprehension, conviction, or resolution by civil compromise or final adjudication by a juvenile court of a hit-and-run offender. It also sets the amounts for standing rewards: $1,000 for a hit-and-run incident that results in property damage only, $5,000 for a hit-and-run incident that results in injury other than serious injury, $25,000 for a hit-and-run incident that results in permanent serious injury as defined by the Vehicle Code Section 20,001D, and $50,000 which provides for hit-and-run incidents that result in death. The draft ordinance also creates a review and a recommendation process by the LAPD with final approval by the City Council, which is very similar to the graffiti, vandalism, and illegal dumping standing reward program.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from the department, and the direction that I would like, Mr. Chair, is to ask the police department to develop a comprehensive outreach plan and have it ready to present before it comes to council when we schedule it.
Understood.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Dave Ferry, newly assigned to Emergency Operations Division. Very, very exciting. First thing we're going to do is reach out to our media relations, press conferences, have them find their contacts in the written media. All of our geographic areas and our traffic bureaurs.
Right.
We're going to have them reach out to the community members in meetings and CPAB meetings.
Great.
Social media, of course, get the word out that way.
Sure.
I'm going to turn to some private entities like Crime Stoppers, have them get the word out, advertise.
Right.
But one thing regarding this that's going to be extraordinarily effective from my point of view is at a newsworthy hit-and-run crime scene, the detective, the lieutenant, or the sergeant that's out there can not only say, hey, we need your help with this, but there's a reward related to it.
Sure.
We can be out there the next day with crime bulletins and flyers and reward right up top, so we can gather this information when it's fresh in people's minds and the people who were there are still there.
And one of our key partners, of course, are our media partners as well that have covered these stories day in and day out. And I would ask that we really tap into some of their PSAs that they air. I know some they air at 2 or 3 in the morning, but maybe we can have them air these PSAs during prime time. So I appreciate that. And also I want to recognize, we often say around here that we rarely get community impact statements from our neighborhood councils. I want to thank the West LA Neighborhood Council and the Bel Air, Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council for submitting community impact statements on this item, and I ask we move forward. And before, again, Mr. Chair, if we can, before it comes to council, ask the police department to put together a comprehensive outreach program on how we're going to publicize this.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Well, I would like to move it to council, so it'll come to council with that.
Yes.
So it's not held in this committee.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and move it. But before we move it, colleagues, there was a new ordinance draft that came in. So we're going to go receive the original draft. There was a technical modification that's been circulated, and we'll approve the new draft without objection.
Yes, I'll move.
That'll be the order. The motion passes. Great. Thank you very much.
So much
Appreciate
for
it.
your
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, I believe that we have one more item.
Your last item is item 7, LAPD to give a presentation on the status of online police reporting.
Colleagues, I'd like to bring your attention to this item. This is something we've been working very closely with. It was a motion that I brought in, I think going back almost, maybe it's a couple years now, a year and a half or so. Year and a half. The idea on this, and Maggie, thank you so much for all the work that you do, not just on this, but on everything. The idea is that for folks wanting to file a police report, they can go online and do so 24 hours a day in the comfort of their own home. They don't have to take time off work, away from the family, go down to a police station. They do so with the idea of it's still filed as a police report under the penalty of perjury. There are other agencies, as well as CSUN, in fact, police, that does this. These are for minor crimes, nonviolent crimes, and the whole idea is also to free up the officer time, quite frankly. Not just at the desk, but calling 911 and having somebody roll out. And so you can go online on your own time, fill out a police report. A lot of cell phone companies, in fact, require that if you lose your cell phone for the cell phone insurance, you've got to fill out a police report. And it's really a waste of resources, time, energy, effort, and money for the taxpayers to have to go do that. And so thank you for all the work you've done on this, and I just wanted to get a status update on where we might be at.
Thank you. Good morning. Maggie Goodrich, CIO for LAPD. Yes, so I think your motion was about a year and a half ago, and then shortly thereafter, Chief Beck also put online reporting on his priority list for 2014. We did release an RFP in 2014. We selected a vendor. I was hoping to have started by the end of 2014. Unfortunately, the attorneys are still debating some of the terms and conditions of the contract, but they are close to coming to agreement. So my hope is that in the next few weeks, we'll go to the Board of Police Commissioners and then to Council for approval on that contract and then start the project. The project as a whole, from start to finish, will take about 5 months to implement. To get ahead of that, we've started a working group within the Office of Operations to start identifying which types of reports we'll take online and come up with a specific language that will be asked in each of those reports. We're trying to create a very good user experience, and that will prompt the right questions to the user to make sure that we get the right information so that we can take the appropriate action. But your example of the lost cell phone was a perfect one. Right now, you get in line at a front desk at a station to ask to file a report so that you can submit it to your phone company or insurance company or whatever it may be. Something like that should be able to be performed at home at your computer and printed out and submitted without having to use officer time to do something like that. And have the community members stand in a station doing that. So we'll be defining that list here over the next few months and working with the vendor, and about 5 months after that, we should have it up and running.
Fantastic. So the end of this year?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm really excited about this. I mean, talk about utilizing technology and efficiency and customer service, saving resources. I mean, it just does all of that.
Does it also include an app? Be able to, I know, online service?
The initial launch will be a website, but then the next phase would be the app, yes.
Yeah. And an app would be great, although hopefully people aren't filing them every day, and it's not a frequent thing you would use, but
that's our goal, is that ultimately that you could also even take a photo with the app of evidence and submit that with your report.
Fantastic.
Well,
it's great.
Actually, rather than its own app, is it something that could be integrated into our 311 app?
Yes, absolutely.
No, absolutely. Sky's the limit. So with that, we'll go ahead and move this item without objection. Actually, we'll keep it in the committee because we'll reschedule it for when we're a little closer so we can have an overview. There's no reason to move this to council. It's simply for an update. We truly appreciate it.
The contract.
So we'll keep it here. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Congrats.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the public safety agenda. We are adjourned.